Welcome to Kim Talks Resilience, where we share stories of insight and inspiration in life, love, and business with resilient women from around the world. Speaking with authors, entrepreneurs, founders, and coaches to learn their strategies for a more resilient life so we can all build the life we love. I'm your host, Kim Hayden. All righty, welcome back to Kim Talks Resilience. And you know what? It's all in the name of the show. We're going to be talking to an amazing gal here today. I'm going to give you a quick overview. Dana Killion is the author of the Andrea Kellner mystery series. So it's the whole series. So like she's not like me where it's just like one book at a time. It's like the whole series is here. She presents herself first memoir, Where the Shadows Dance. He got sober, I got broke. A story born of life in turmoil where the only way through was to ride it. So welcome to the show, Dana.
Happy to be here.
I am super excited. I really love talking to especially authors because it's not a space that is a strong suit for me. So I'm always fascinated to find out a little more and dive a little bit deeper because the studies show they've done surveys and it's something like 80% of all people say they want to write a book, but less than like 6% of people actually publish a book. So that's and you've got a series and like plus, like you just keep doing, right? So, but you laugh. I'm going, how does she do it? And we're going to get into that. So, Dana, can you first start us off with a little bit of kind of pre-frame as to who you are?
Sure. My early years actually were a career in the apparel industry. I was a clothing designer and worked in fit. I've traveled all over the world in and out of factories, ensuring garment fit and construction. But there was a family situation back in the middle of around 2015 that required me to have a little more flexibility in my life. So I made a pretty significant career shift and I started writing because I needed something that was portable, something that would allow me to work anywhere, and something that would allow me to attend to the family challenges that were going on for me. So I started into the path of fiction and I analyzed what I liked to read. It was always mystery, it was always female protagonist, and it was series and first person point of view. So that's what I set out to do. And I published my first book in that series in 2017. And now there are a total of 6 books.
So, was having I guess, the quiet time of the pandemic where, the world kind of that chaos slowed for a lot of people, was that beneficial to you as an author?
Actually, it was because I'd already built up the time where I am working for myself, I'm working from home. I didn't need all that um, social feedback, I guess. So it was a pretty easy adjustment for me because I was already in the middle of a pretty small world. As a writer, your world is pretty small. You're spending a lot of time alone. You're spending a lot of time thinking things through. And so pandemic wasn't that difficult for me on that front.
On that front. So, you've also written a memoir, and that's gotta be a very different feel from writing a fictional series. Um, well, obviously. Hello, Kim. That was kind of a silly statement. Um, but how do you even delve into because memoirs can be very, um they can leave you feeling very exposed.
True.
Right? I have tried writing a bit around my story, and it's just something that I said, "You know what? I'm gonna leave this to other people. This is not a space that is comfortable or a space that I wanna be in." So walk me through how you get from the fictional series to doing your memoir and, around what time? What triggered all that?
So I started writing fiction about 2015, published the first mystery in 2017. And my protagonist in that is a female investigative journalist. I was living in Chicago at the time. I based her on kind of my neighborhood, my life. I used her in some ways. She has some characterizations, some qualities that I have, and she has qualities that I didn't and wished I had. So I was, prior to even thinking about a memoir, I was already in that place of writing and had, I think, 4 books out at that point in time. Quite frankly, never would have done the memoir if I had not already published fiction.
Oh, okay.
Because, yeah, there is a real vulnerability
Mhm.
when you are exposing yourself. In order to write fiction, we can hide ourselves. We can hide the qualities that are us. We can use our traumas, our pain, our fears, and hide it behind character and situations. Memoir, you can't do that. Many people who think about writing memoir have that debate in them. Should I fictionalize my story as a way to tell it because it's less vulnerable that way? That wasn't going to be my approach. I started writing not intending to turn this into a memoir. I started writing as a journal. I was going through some very difficult emotional things. My former husband is an alcoholic, and this is the focus of the memoir. What does it feel like? What is the experience of being on the sidelines of addiction? Because I found that the resources available in general are not extensive. And in that world, all of the resources are pretty heavily focused on the addict. And it is just assumed that those of us on the sidelines trying to hold everything together, we're just going to figure it out. And the only thing that's important is that he stops drinking. That really wasn't my experience of it. So I began journaling as a way to supplement therapy and Al-Anon and those other more traditional methods for expressing what's going on in your life. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I did find it extremely helpful as a way to fill in the really raw stuff that I felt like I couldn't say. I hate him today. Those are things that I didn't know if they would ever see the light of day, but I needed the outlet. But as I was journaling and the situation in my marriage was playing out, I'm a writer. I'm finding some healing through this journaling process. It seemed like the natural next step to try to turn that journal into a manuscript. I knew I didn't have to publish it, however. Many
Yeah.
of us have manuscripts that sit in a drawer and they never see the light of day. And that's okay. There's a healing quality to that too. But I found that the writing process was so healing. I got to the point in putting that first draft, what we call the dirty first draft, the ugly draft that nobody should ever see. And I realized not only that there was some healing to it, but there was also had been so much silence in my own life. There's so much silence around addiction. There's so much silence, particularly for those of us that are the loved ones, trying to help somebody that we care about through this process. We're trying to solve our life together. We're trying to find a way through it. And I began to see that my silence was harmful to me. It starts out as a protective mechanism, but I was slowly finding my voice through my journaling and then turning it into a draft. And I began to understand that I had something that I kind of wish I had had earlier on, that if I could find a way to use my voice to make my experience public, I could help other people heal too. Because we feel so isolated and alone in this sideline, and we feel so guilty when we are hurting, and it's as if we're not supposed to spend time handling our own emotional needs. But it becomes damaging, and we just don't see it for a very long time. So that's kind of it's a long way of answering what was going on through my mind, because it wasn't a direct line. It was a slow process that evolved for me. I did not start out with the idea of writing a memoir. The need to do it evolved. as
Yep.
I was writing, and the writing was helping me find my voice again on something difficult. And then I was using it for further healing, not only for myself, but also for others by sharing my story. It makes all of us less feel alone when we know that we're not the only ones. So, again, long answer to your question, but writing
No,
memoir
that's
is not easy. It's not a, most of us don't have we have tough stories and we don't make a quick,
yeah.
yeah, the world needs to know.
I completely agree. Like I said, I it's not something I've been able to accomplish, so I have huge respect, huge respect. My question would be around, the business side of this is how did you have a publishing house? How did is this, your full-time business? Like, though I think that a lot of people have a lot of questions and there's a lot of conflicting information out there as to becoming a published author and how where is the return on investment and such. Would you mind Are you open to sharing just a little bit of that back side? So
Absolutely.
housekeeping?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
The publishing industry is very unusual and it is evolving. We have the classic route to publishing, which is you write your book and you try to find an agent. The agent, which is a very difficult process, the agent then sells it to a publisher. And that may or may not happen. And then the author only gets paid in chunks, in installments, if you find an agent and that agent can indeed sell the book to a publishing house. And then the author gets a percentage and the agent gets a percentage. That's the classic history of how the publishing world works in a nutshell. And it's really hard. The number of people that have written books and versus the number of projects that publishing houses want to take on, those numbers are not stacked in our favor, to be honest.
Yeah.
Publishing is a business too. They want to know that they're going to make money. And that means selling lots of copies. In order for it to be worthwhile, you have to have the match with the product that you're selling, i.e., your book, with the agent who wants to represent that kind of work, and the publishing house who wants to take on the cost. Because nobody makes money right away. It is long, it is slow, it is not a fast track to any kind of wealth for any author. There are authors that are very big names who are in the millionaire category. Most authors are not.
Yeah.
So there's a conversation that has to be had. You have to have as someone who wants to have a business. With my fiction, I publish independently. I formed my own publishing company and I kind of act as an independent, like the way a general contractor would for a business, where I am hiring the subs. So I hire the editors, I hire the cover designer, I hire all of the people that take it to market. But that means I have control. That also means I have access to all the sales data, which you don't have as a traditionally published author. Kind of splitting hairs and getting into some of the weeds, but one of the weird things about the publishing industry is we don't get real-time data about how our books are doing. If you're going the traditional route, you get numbers months down the road at a point in time. You can't react. You don't know what your marketing is doing or not doing. I was going through a lot of change when my mysteries in my family life, when my mysteries were ready to go. So I chose the route that I had control over. And for me, that meant independently publishing. So, like I said, I formed my own publishing company and I sell worldwide. I've sold in 54 countries. I can look at my data anytime I like. I can write as many books as I like, anytime that I like. And I can sell them any way I want to. So I have print, I have ebook, I have audio. That is something under my control. And I felt the need to do that. But I can do that as a fiction author, particularly as a fiction author who writes series, because the hardest thing is always, how do I let the world know I've done this?
Okay, so how do you do that?
In fiction, what we're doing as independent authors, it's not PR tours, it is advertising on Amazon, on Facebook, on BookBub, those kind of vehicles, building mailing lists. Series are particularly helpful when you're independently published because we want to get new readers into the first book in the series. If they like it, they go on and they read the others. And we put links in the back of our book to everything else that we've written. We update that all the time. So all of our work as an independent author in that realm is about how do I let people know I exist and how do I keep new work coming to them. But I can control that. If I see that my advertising on Amazon isn't working and I want to change categories or change my language, I can do it in 10 minutes and be done. But I know what's working because I see the sales dashboard at all of the retailers. It's not just throwing a book up on Amazon. It is Barnes & Noble. It is Apple. It is Kobo. We have the ability as independent authors to sell anywhere we like, in any format we like. Whereas in traditional publishing, the old route of agent to sell to publisher, you don't have any of that back data. You don't ever know because you don't control the dashboard. You get cumulative reports months later that you sold 1,000 books. Can't react to that.
Interesting.
So that was
Yeah.
my path for the fiction. But that's not a good sales path for memoir.
Okay. So there's a difference then, eh?
There is a difference. I find that there is in terms of how do people discover memoir? How do people discover really anything that's nonfiction? Because you're talking about specific subject matter around your book. I can't go on TV and say, hey, I wrote a mystery series. It's about a cool woman who does tough things. Nobody cares. That is not important. That doesn't, the news, the podcasters, they don't really care about that. But if I'm writing a story like I am about being on the sidelines of addiction, we have a lot of conversation we can have about mental health. We can have conversation about resilience. We can have conversations about transforming our life. And that means selling the book in a more traditional way. So yes, I've gone for the more traditional path in my memoir because it's more closely aligned. The marketing channel is more closely aligned. I can't just pop it up on Amazon or pop it up and throw an ad up. I have to have adjacencies. I have to have the ability to write companion articles. I have to have the ability to talk about the subject matter more so than, hey, I wrote a book. That's what sells books in any of the nonfiction categories.
I think you're the first person I've spoken to in 2 years that has done both sides of the publishing space, and that's very, that's kind of eye-opening. That's
Mm.
a big rarity. Um, and I know that there's a lot of women that are coming out of that corporate space. They're coming through all these challenges, these right sizings. There's a lot of turmoil that's going on right now. And I know a lot of them have incredible nonfiction works within them, be it something aligned with what their expertise is. Were you a CFO that was let go and now you're going to be a fractional CFO? So how do I get all my best thinking in one spot? It could be somebody who's in the therapist space. It could be somebody who's gone into the lived experience space like yourself. But I did not understand in full clarity the difference between the 2 because we've done self-published just because I shouldn't say just, we do collaboration books that are specifically designed to get top thinking for multiple people, and we all push together. So it kind of elevates and buoys different books. So somebody already has a book. Most of the people in these books do have books already. It just buoys that SEO and that awareness of what they have going on. Now, you've turned this over to a third party and you don't have control.
Yeah.
And I would say this is part of a story of resilience, but I'd really like you, if you're open, whatever you're willing to share your story of resilience that pertains to kind of where you've gone through and what you're sharing now, and how do you feel that that impacts others?
Well, everything behind this memoir is really a story of resilience. I was in a long-term, a 25-year marriage to an alcoholic, and that in itself is challenging for anyone because we are in this place of watching someone we love slowly die. And if we are not really careful, he's going to take everybody else around with him. It is you as the spouse, the sober partner. It is your children. It is your finances. It is your mental health. But we are trained to think about the addict. So the resilience of understanding that if you go down with the ship, everybody fails. The addict will not get sober. Your children will take on whatever horrible things that are shown as examples. And so we as sober partners, whether we know we're doing it or not, we're working ourselves to the bone, trying to keep everybody else alive and sturdy and strong as best we can. But what happens in that process is we don't see what's happening to us individually. We can't separate ourselves right away for a very long time often because our focus is on someone else. So only when something happens that we either are not in that relationship anymore or he doesn't make it, do we actually see what's happened to us and kind of what's left. Or maybe along the way we've had to make a decision I can't let my kids go down to. So resilience is everywhere in this problem that we are facing. It's not a single incident. It becomes an aspect of who you are, and you have to make a decision along the way. Am I going to let this experience, maybe I've saved him, maybe I have, maybe I haven't. But have I been so damaged personally in the process that there's nothing left of me? Or can I find it within myself to muster the internal fortitude to save myself and my family? And not only can I save us, but can I grow from the experience? Can I be better on the other side of it? That is often the missing part. How do I take this horrible trauma, and it is a trauma for anybody that's had addiction in their family life, whether it's a parent, a sober partner, whether you're the sober partner, a parent, this is trauma, and it's long-term chronic trauma. Resilience is about not just getting through it and surviving. Resilience to me is taking this experience and finding some way to use it for good. And so that's my
Wow.
big resilience in all of this is writing a book I never thought I could writing a book that is the most vulnerable thing I have ever done. And I'm doing it not just to save me, but I'm doing it to help other people, largely women, who have been in this situation too, to find a way forward for themselves because we get stuck in the pain. So that's, it's not a concise resilience story, but it is
No,
resilience.
it's absolutely, absolutely, and it reminds me of that whole, oxygen mask first. It's the airplanes. If you don't put your mask on, you can't help or serve those around you.
True.
And did you have children in all of this mix? Like, you you 2 kids too, and what do they say about your book and about how you've literally what were you doing before? I'm sorry, you told me what you were doing before.
I
What
was
were
in
you
the
doing?
industry. I was a,
Okay, apparel.
and
So you had a job, you had a paycheck,
I did.
and literally in the last less than a decade, you've completely turned your life around and confronted a lot of things that many people would never confront. What do
Yes.
your kids think of you? What do they say?
It's a difficult thing for them. Part of it is because the manner in which my former husband drank was pretty hidden. Very few people knew. He's a very high functioning addict, and to this day, the world still doesn't see him that way. So the kids didn't see it. Only when we told them later, after there's been rehab and issues, they were confused. And they were in this place of trying to look back like we do. We reflect. So maybe that's what was going on, but they didn't have the context. And by the time we were speaking to them about it, they were college aged.
Yeah.
So it was a different perspective. And kids often don't know what's happening. We don't see our parents as parents. We don't see our parents as people. So what's going on is a hard one to wrap their heads around. The book is a struggle for them because they're in this place of, okay, mommy and daddy and loyalties. And yes, she had this experience. How much do I want to know?
Yeah.
How do I love both of the parents? How
And I
do I
think
not choose?
that's important.
Yeah,
That's important to keep that intact. What's
absolutely.
something that you would say to a woman coming up behind you, like a woman that's 10 years younger than you? If you could give your past self advice going back to 2014, 2013, before all this journey of writing your first series, and you notice how I said first, and I'm sure there will be a second somewhere, but what is it that you would share? What would be the advice you would give yourself, your younger self?
I think one of the biggest issues that I didn't understand at that point is that the silence that I took on about what was happening in my marriage and my life, I thought of it as protective. I'm protecting my husband, the marital loyalty thing, keeping our pain close because we don't want to talk about it endlessly if we're not coming up with solutions.
Yeah.
So I kept, for good reasons, protecting my family, my kids, myself, my ego, all of it. I kept pretty silent. So the advice that I would give that I now know is that there is such incredible beauty to be found in your voice, in letting go, in shedding the silence, whatever trauma caused the silence, finding safe places, safe vehicles. It can be people, it doesn't have to be a book like I've done, but there is incredible power in taking whatever that stuff is inside you that is traumatic and painful and getting it out of your head and out of your heart. It can be journaling. It can be things that you write down and throw in the shredder. It can be a trusted friend that you can call at 4 a.m. when you are dying in pain. It can be a therapist. Find some place. The fear that you have, it's not as hard and as painful as you think it's going to be. There is beauty on the other side. There is beauty in finding courage within yourself to do something you didn't think you could do.
I have nothing to add. That's so well put. That's so well put. And if you get to know me, Dana, you'll find out usually Kim's got lots to say. So, yeah, it's giving voice, speaking up, engaging. It's because the longer you hide or be silent, the harder it is to come out and speak up for yourself.
And that is one of the aspects that happens in any kind of trauma. We hold it for so long, so close, that you get to the point of, where do I even start? I
Yeah.
don't know how to tell my story without falling apart. So that just reinforces the silence. Break it down, find small ways. It has to come out or you are going to stay hurting. And I've come across many women who've been hurting their whole lives. And that's so sad to me. You're allowing this pain, this trauma to diminish you just by staying silent about it.
Wow. What would you like the readers to take away from your books? Like, what do you think is your ultimate goal that readers take away?
Well, fiction is a little different, of course, than the memoir. In
Yeah.
fiction, I still have a strong female lead. She is the center person who gets things done. She solves the crime, and she uses it through her own resilience and her persistence. And I think those are also the underlying themes in the memoir. And as I was writing the memoir, and more importantly, when the stage where the book is manuscript is done, I thought, and I'm trying to shop the book, you've got to write this proposal. And it was at that stage that I really saw the similarities, the overlap, and the persistence of my protagonist, that need to solve the crime, to get through it. It really translated, and one thing kind of led to another. So I would say there's an underlying message in all of my books for strength, and for female strength, and for female resilience.
What an amazing gift to be able to give, be it on because if somebody's not ready to face, then the fictional side is giving that kind of leadership, like, "Ooh, ooh, she's cool. I could be like her." But if you're ready to face, if you're ready to step into your next journey, your book, your memoir is almost like that, "I've already walked this forward, so you can come right in."
That's exactly what readers are reaching out. I read your book, I stumbled on it, and oh my God, that is my story too. Thank you, because now I know I'm not alone. It's giving me hope that if you can get through this, maybe I can too.
Yep.
It's like having the big sister that you can talk to. I didn't have that, so I guess that's kind of the role I'm playing for others who are, and it doesn't really matter what the trauma is. It doesn't have to be addiction. Many of us have had big traumas in our lives, and traumas that have kept us small and contained and silent. So what I'm doing in both the fiction and very importantly in the nonfiction is that the reader can see themselves, can see somebody else that's perhaps a little further along, and have that, here's somebody that's done it, and maybe it wasn't so bad, or maybe it was pretty bad, but look where she is now. Look what she's come to do. Because at the end of this, we all live with a lot of guilt of, I should have done this, I should have done that. The regrets, they just weigh on anybody that's been in trauma. The things that we wished we'd said, done different. We all have them. And I look at that very different now, because as awful as some of this experience was for me, I've done something with it. And I like myself a hell of a lot better on this side of it than I did before it all began. So that confidence that I've done it has changed me, that I got through it. I saved a man's life, and I've saved my own.
That, folks, is Where the Shadows Dance. He got sober, I got broken. Uh, Dana, and it's Dana Killion. So if you're listening in, Dana Killion, can you share with us your socials and how people can engage with you?
My website is danakillion.com. I am on Facebook, Dana Killion Author, Instagram, Dana Killion Author as well. And I love hearing from people who've read my book. It is the most amazing experience for me to get a comment from someone who's taken the time. Many of the people who contact me are just, I'm only halfway through, but I had to stop and talk to you. Because it's the reinforcement for me that I'm doing what I set out to do, of helping someone. And for anybody who stops, where do I go? I need to comment that if you feel inclined to do that, what better thing can you possibly say to an author? Somehow You've touched my life. That's why we write. There's no reason to write a book if it's just to go blah, 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 my life, my life. You write these kinds of stories to help other people. Otherwise, who cares? Write it, but keep it in the drawer. If you're going to write a memoir, it needs to help somebody. So that's what the feedback, whether it's on social or email or whatever, that's what it does. It reinforces that we're helping each other. There's strength in the numbers of us. You're not alone. There are so many of us, even if we're not ready to talk about it. Even if we want to be anonymous on social, we're still there. We're still together. The resources are out there.
Amazing. And if you're out there and now's not the right time yet, if you're not there yet, that's okay. Get ready. Just, go find Dana. Like, all of her information is in the show notes. I promise you, it never hurts to start building that group around you that will help you when you're ready. So, uh, Dana, I really appreciate you. You have such a great energy, like, you're so calm, and I can only imagine, like, the pacing within your books, because the pacing in the delivery of your story is so perfect also. So, any final words you'd like to share? Anything along those lines?
Well, I'm overwhelmed. I love talking about this subject, not because it's talking about me, but it's this way for me to give meaning to a painful experience I have, and to help others. So contact me any way you'd like. Just stalk me on social if you want to watch videos for a while and do my reels, and you'll see some things. Even if you don't comment, there's stuff there that I'm sharing about my experience and my thoughts.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Dana, for sharing your time, your insight, and so grateful that you found that oxygen mask so you could help others out.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Alrighty. Absolutely. All right, folks. This is the end of this episode of Kim Talks Resilience. But don't you worry. I'll be back. I promise. We're on a quest. We're on a mission here, finding all these amazing women that will help you in no matter where your life is going. We're going to help you get there better and with purpose. Thank you, Donna. Thank you for joining us here today at Kim Talks Resilience. I'm your host, Kim Hayden, and I'd love to invite you to our resilient community at resilientgift.com. That's resilientgift.com, and we'll send you our magazine and tickets for upcoming events and all sorts of cool things we do here. So be sure to keep watching, and you know what? Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share, because we all know that sharing is caring.